Greetings, fleshbags. I'm General Bones, your skeletal guide through the dusty corridors of history. All bones, all heart, just a passion for the past and a grin that's been permanent since, well, forever. Today, we're diving skull first into 1975, to the Fall of Saigon, the dramatic, heart-pounding finale of the Vietnam War. Let's kick things off by setting the stage, shall we? Picture Vietnam in the mid-20th century, a land split down the middle like a cracked ribcage. Up north, you've got the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, communist to the core, led by the wiry, wily Ho Chi Minh. Down south, the Republic of Vietnam, propped up by the United States and its anti-communist allies, was trying to hold its own. Here's the man himself, Ho Chi Minh. Born Nguyen Sinh Cung, he took on a dozen aliases before settling on the one that stuck. He was a revolutionary with a vision. A unified communist Vietnam, free from colonial chains. Now, meet Ngo Dinh Diem, the South's first big shot. He took the reins in 1955, backed by the U.S., who saw him as a bulwark against the red tide. Problem was, Diem wasn't exactly a people's champ. Enter the Vietnam War proper. It simmered through the 50s with guerrilla fights. The Viet Cong, those crafty southern rebels, teamed up with the North, but it exploded in the 60s when the U.S. jumped in boots first. By 1965, hundreds of thousands of American troops were slogging through jungles and rice paddies, fighting a war that was hot, humid, and hard to win. The North Vietnamese Army, or NVA, and the Viet Cong were no pushovers. They knew the land, tunnels, traps, hit-and-run tactics. I've studied maps of battles like Ia Drang in '65, where choppers buzzed and bullets flew. The U.S. had firepower, but the enemy had grit. Then came 1968 and the Tet Offensive, a massive coordinated attack on cities across the South. Tet was a shockwave. The North and Viet Cong hit over 100 targets, Saigon, Hue, you name it. Militarily, they didn't hold the ground, but psychologically, they won big. Back in the States, TV screens showed chaos and folks started doubting the war. Protests flared. Kids burning draft cards, chanting, "Hell no, we won't go." Support crumbled like old plaster. By 1973, the U.S. had had enough. The Paris Peace Accords were signed. Nixon called it peace with honor. American troops went home, leaving South Vietnam with promises of aid. The North agreed to a ceasefire. But I've seen enough wars to know a truce is just a breather. The South's army, the ARVN, was left holding the bag, about 800,000 strong, but underfunded and overstretched. Their gear was decent. Tanks, planes, rifles. But morale was lower than a snake's belly. Meanwhile, the North rebuilt, resupplied by the Soviets and Chinese. Their army was lean, mean and ready. Over 300,000 troops, plus tanks and artillery, all itching to finish the job. So, here we are, March 1975. The North's General Van Tien Dung launched the spring offensive. A masterstroke to take Saigon and end it all. The South was alone. Aid from the U.S. drying up as Congress said no more. It was a storm brewing, and Saigon was smack in its path. Let's zoom in, shall we? March 10th, 1975. Mark that date, folks. The North kicked off the spring offensive with a thunderclap at Ban Me Thuot, a sleepy town in the Central Highlands. Why there? It was the South's linchpin, control the highlands, and you could slice Vietnam in two. These T-54S were Soviet gifts, 49 tons of rolling thunder. The South's 23rd Division was caught flat-footed. Their commander, Brigadier General Trung Tuong, tried to hold the line, but his troops were outmanned and outgunned. By March 11th, Ban Me Thuot was North Vietnam's first domino down. South Vietnam's President Nguyen Van Chu panicked. He ordered a retreat from the highlands to regroup along the coast, a plan called light at the top, heavy at the bottom. Sounds clever, right? Except it was a disaster. The ARVN pulled back down Route 7B, a narrow, winding road that turned into a chokehold. Soldiers ditched tanks, civilians clogged the path, kids, grannies, whole families running for their lives. I can still see it. Route 7B became the highway of tears. The North's 968th Division hounded them, artillery raining down. By March 18th, the retreat was a rout. Tens of thousands dead or captured, equipment littering the road like bones in a graveyard. Next up, Hue, the old Imperial City. March 23rd, the NVA's 324B and 324B and 325th Divisions rolled in from the west, while the 304th hit from the south. The ARVN's 1st Division fought hard. Trenches, sandbags, M16s blazing. But morale was shot. By March 25th, Hue fell. Civilians fled to the Perfume River, boats sinking under the weight of desperation. The North didn't stop to celebrate. They turned to Dang, the South's second city. March 28th, rockets lit up the sky. NVA artillery softening the target. The ARVN's I Corps, led by General Ngo Quang Truong, tried to organize a defense, but chaos ruled. Soldiers deserted, blending into crowds of refugees. March 29th, Da Nang's airport was a madhouse. Planes grounded. Da Nang's airport was a madhouse. Planes grounded. People begging for a way out. By March 30th, the city was North Vietnam's. Over 100,000 ARVN troops surrendered or fled. 150,000 civilians hit the sea in anything that floated. I've got a photo here that chills my non-existent spine. The South was unraveling. Thieu resigned on April 21st, bawling on TV about U.S. betrayal. Congress had slashed aid to a pittance. Vice President Tran Huang took over, then handed the mess to Duong Van Minh. Big Min on April 28th. Too late, my friends. The North smelled blood. And Saigon was next. The spring offensive was a blitz, 3 weeks, 3 major losses. The NVA lost men, sure, maybe 10,000, but their momentum was unstoppable. The ARVN, over 50,000 gone, dead or scattered. Saigon braced itself, but one last stand loomed before the end. April 9th, 1975, Xuan Loc, the South's Alamo. This wasn't just a battle. It was a last hurrah. General Le Minh Dao, commanding the ARVN 18th Division, dug in with about 6,000 men. Infantry, Rangers, artillery. They faced the NVA's IV Corps, 25,000 strong, with the 6th, 7th, and 341st Divisions, plus tanks and 130 mm guns. Dao knew the odds, but he wasn't backing down. Dao's boys were tough, veterans of a dozen fights. They fortified Xuan Loc with bunkers, mines, barbed wire. The town sat on Highway 1, Saigon's lifeline to the east. Hold it, and you delay the inevitable. Lose it, and the road's wide open. The NVA hit at dawn. Artillery first, a deafening barrage that shook the earth. April 10th, the NVA's 7th Division charged. Infantry in green, bayonets fixed. The 18th met them with M48 Patton tanks and M113 carriers spitting fire. It was brutal. Close quarters, house to house. The South's Air Force, the VNAF, swooped in. F-5S and A-37S dropping bombs so close Dao's men felt the heat. One pilot, Captain Nguyen Van Quom, flew sortie after sortie till he ran out of fuel and ditched. Gutsy lad, April 11th. 12, the NVA tightened the grip. The 341st Division flanked from the north, cutting supply lines. Dao countered with his 52nd Ranger Battalion, cracked shots and ambushed NVA patrols in the rubber plantations. Night fights were chaos, flares turning dark to day, tracer rounds stitching the sky. By April 15th, the NVA brought up the T-54S. Dozens of them, grinding forward. The 18th anti-tank teams fought back with M72 at Law's shoulder-fired rockets. One sergeant, Tran Van High, took out 3 tanks before an artillery shell got him. Heroes like that kept Xuan Loc alive. But the NVA had numbers. Over 40,000 shells hit the town in a week, turning streets to rubble. April 17th, Dow got a morale boost. Paratroopers from the 1st Airborne Battalion dropped in. They hit the NVA's rear, buying time. But the enemy adapted. General Deng shifted the 6th Division south, encircling tighter. The 18th was down to 4,000 men, ammo low, wounded piling up. Dow radioed Saigon. We'll fight to the last bullet. And they damn near did. April 20th, the end came. NVA sappers breached the lines. Commandos with satchel charges blowing bunkers sky high. At 5 a.m. on April 21st, Dow ordered a breakout. Survivors slipped through to Long Con. Xuan Loc fell by noon, 2,000 ARVN dead, twice that wounded or captured. The NVA lost maybe 5,000. A steep price, but they'd cleared the path. Xuan Loc was the South's finest hour, and its last stand. Dow's defiance slowed the NVA by 2 weeks, gave Saigon a breather. But the noose was tight, and the clock was ticking down to zero. April 28th, 1975. Saigon was a pressure cooker ready to blow. The NVA was 10 miles out, rockets slamming the suburbs. The U.S. ambassador, Graham Martin, finally gave the nod. Operation Frequent Wind. Time to get out. Americans, allies, anyone who'd backed the South and feared the Red Hammer. I watched it unfold, and oh, what a whirlwind. The embassy was ground zero. Over 7,000 souls needed out. Diplomats, staff, Vietnamese aides. From 2 p.m. on April 29th, Marine choppers, CH-46 6C Knights and CH-53C Stallions buzzed in, landing every 10 minutes. Crowds surged the gates, tearing at fences. Up top, folks climbed aboard, clutching bags, kids, anything. I've got a story. Nguyen De Lan, a translator, pushed her son onto a chopper as it lifted off. She stayed behind, waving. That's war's cruel math. Tan Son Nhut Airport was a bust. Son Nhut Airport was a bust. NVA rockets trashed the runways by 4 p.m. C-130s set useless, fuel tanks ablaze. Panic reigned. RVN soldiers fired into crowds, desperate for a seat. But some got creative. Captain Vu Van Truong flew his UH-1 Huey out, wife and kids aboard, landing on the USS Kirk. Another, Major Buong Lane, stuffed his family into a tiny O-1 bird dog, ditched it near the USS Midway, and got plucked from the sea. Heroes, everyone. The 7th Fleet, Midway. Hancock, Okinawa, floated 20 miles off Vung Tau. Choppers landed nonstop, decks so crammed they pushed birds overboard to clear space. By midnight, the 80 helicopters had flown 660 sorties, lifting 1,373 Americans and 5,375 Vietnamese. 5,595 Vietnamese. But thousands were left. Embassy guards burned cash and papers, shredding secrets as the NVA closed in. The human toll was raw. A Marine, Corporal Charles McMahon, died in a rocket blast at Tan Son Nhut, last American KIA in Vietnam. Civilians begged, bartered, gold heirlooms for a spot. One man, Tran Van Duke, swam the Saigon River to reach a barge pulling his daughter along. They made it to a ship, barely. These tales stick with me, even without a heart to tug. By dawn, April 30th, the evacuation was done. Ambassador Martin boarded the last chopper at 4:58 a.m. Evacuation was done. Ambassador Martin boarded the last chopper at 4:58 a.m. Stars and stripes tucked under his arm. Over 100,000 Vietnamese escaped in those frantic days, choppers, boats, sheer will. But for everyone who got out, 10 stayed facing what came next, facing what came next. April 30th, 1975. The endgame. Saigon woke to artillery echoes. NVA troops at the city limits. 10:24 a.m. History in motion. Tank 843, 203rd Tank Brigade, smashed through the palace gates. Inside, Min waited with aides. Colonel B-10 strode in, pistol on hip. Min said, "I've been waiting to transfer power." Tin shot back. "Your power's gone. You can't give what you don't have." Outside, Saigon held its breath. By 11 a.m., NVA units hit key spots. Tan Son Nhut, the radio station Newport Bridge. Some ARVN fought. Pockets of gunfire, but most melted away, shedding uniforms. Civilians watched, some cheering, some weeping. I drifted the streets in spirit, tension thick as fog. Noon. Saigon was North Vietnam's. At 1 p.m., NVA General Tran Van Tried declared victory from the palace. By 3 p.m., Hanoi radio crowed, "Saigon is liberated." The day was surreal. Looters hit abandoned homes. ARVN gear littered roads. At 5 p.m., rain fell, fitting, cleansing, mournful. By night, NVA patrols ruled, a city reborn as Ho Chi Minh City, though that name took time to stick. The South was history. Victory for the North, heartbreak for the South. July 2nd, 1976. Vietnam reunified under Hanoi's red banner. But peace came with a price. Over 200,000 ARVN and officials went to re-education camps. Hard labor, propaganda, years of it. Some never came back. I've seen the numbers, maybe 1 million affected, families shattered. Then the exodus. Boat people, fleeing communism. From 1975 to 1995, over 800,000 arrested. Storms, pirates, starvation. Half made it. Australia, the U.S., Canada. The rest, graves at sea. One girl, Lithiana. The rest, graves at sea. One girl, Lithiang, clung to a raft for days, rescued by a freighter. Her tale's one of millions. Regionally, the dominoes toppled. Laos went communist in 75, Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge same year. Southeast Asia shifted, Cold War lines redrawn. The U.S. reeled 58,000 dead, billions spent, trust broken. Vietnam syndrome froze interventions for a decade. In America, healing was slow. The Wall in D.C., dedicated 1982, lists 58,318 names. I've watched folks touch it, cry, remember. Vietnam scars linger, vets, families, a nation wrestling with why. Globally, it redefined war, media, it redefined war, media, morale, limits of power. Today, Vietnam's one nation, yes, but open, growing. The war's a memory, but a loud one. For the South survivors, it's bittersweet. Loss and resilience intertwined. And there you have it, folks. The Fall of Saigon. From spring's first strike to that final flag. I've rattled through it all. Ban Me Thu Vuot's collapse. Xuan Loc stand, choppers in the sky. A tank through the gates. It's a tale of triumph, tragedy, and lessons etched in bone. Thanks for marching with me. Hope you've learned a bit from this old skeleton. Dig deeper, ask questions, keep history alive. Maybe I'll see you again for another yarn. Till then, stay curious.